attention to a part of your bulletin that I didn't highlight during our announcements. It's this little piece called 43 Against Hate. This is an actual picture of an article that was in the Daily Oklahoman this Wednesday. And it says, "Our houses of worship support a hate-free OKC." These places of worship will devote our worship services to the message of tolerance and respect for all peace-seeking people and their religions. And as you can see, Cathedral of Hope and Church of the Open Arms are both listed here. So this is something to be happy and proud of. I'm very excited. When Albert Einstein was asked late in his life just when and where the theory of relativity had first occurred to him, he traced it back to a dream he had in childhood where he was riding on a sled. As the sled accelerated faster and faster until it approached the speed of light, the stars began to distort into amazing patterns and colors. In many ways, he concluded his entire scientific career could be seen as an extended meditation on that one flash of insight from his dream. The invention of the sewing machine has a similar story as well. Elias Howe in 1844 had reached a stage of exhausted frustration in his efforts to invent a machine that would sew. He fell asleep one night and dreamed he was fleeing from cannibals in the jungle. They captured him, bound him, and took him back to their village to cook him alive in a large pot of water. As the water began to bubble up around him, he attempted to climb out. The cannibals would reach over the cauldron each time and poke him back in with their sharp spears that had holes in the end. Elias awoke agitated, as we all are after dreaming of being eaten alive. But suddenly, he was curious about those spears that had holes in the point. Instantly, he realized that is it. If you move the thread transport hole down to the point of the sewing needle, where it's convenient for the machine, instead of remaining fixated on the needle as a hand tool with the hole in the blunt end, then it is easy to design something that will poke the thread down through the cloth, wrap it around another thread, and pull it back up again, all rapidly and efficiently. It was an aha moment and dream from beyond which sparked Elias's creativity and allowed him to use his gifts to create something of great use to those around him. Our worship theme for today is the gift of being thunderstruck. Those moments during or after the storms of our life when we are gifted with an aha, or a moment of clarity when so much seems to click into place. Storms come and go throughout our years, all with their accompanying lightning, thunder, flash floods, and destruction. But for centuries, the elements of the storm, lightning and thunder, have been used to describe those heightened moments of awareness that come out of nowhere. Yet the timing and wisdom of such insights seem to have a divine quality to them. They often arrive with feelings of wholeheartedness, peace, inner joy, or divine excitement. When I was in the 8th grade at Hefner Middle School, we read the book of Job as a piece of classic literature in my honors English class. The story was already familiar to me. God and Satan get to discussing Job, an upstanding man who was blameless and upright. Satan believes that Job would curse God if he did not have the blessings of his livelihood, his family, and his home. Immediately, Job loses these things, and his friends commence in giving him 33 chapters worth of advice, which does not comfort Job in the least. In chapter 37, our reading for today, Job's friend Elihu proclaims God's majesty and likens the voice of God to the sound of thunder, roaring and rolling across the heavens. Whenever I hear it, my heart trembles. It leaps out of place. Hear the rumbling that comes from God's mouth. God's voice thunders wondrously and performs great acts that we cannot comprehend. Scholars believe that the prologue and epilogue, which contain the dialogue between God and Satan, were added to the story at a later date. However, this writing shows us that for centuries, thunder and lightning have been used to depict the voice of the divine. The author of The Dark Woods describes more fully the metaphor of thunder in our lives. Ellen says, when you may be able to identify times when you have experienced flashes of insight, you may find thunder easier to locate. And in an actual storm, you may miss the lightning entirely. It's brief, soundless, and often comes from a distant place. But even quiet thunder is hard to miss. If you overlook or forget the inner realization that triggers your inner thunder, the ongoing reverberations caused by the lightning sometimes last for years. If we're lucky, we may have one or two big flashy ahas or sweet spot moments in our lives. One problem, however, is how to tell if the light bulb going off above your head is connected to God's purpose for you or the result of the 4-shot espresso you have just drinking. Elms admits that Cheetos and other products that we crave and can become addicted to produce chemical reactions in our bodies, which yield feelings of happiness and well-being, although they are devoid of nutritional value. How can we tell if our aha is from spirit, or just the result of mass-marketed products designed to make us feel good so that we will consume what others want us to? The telltale touchstone is whether or not the insight continues to repeat itself, like thunder, which reverberates over the plain, reminding and signaling back to the original lightning flash that occurred in the first place. Have you ever felt like God is following you? You have a thought that you are supposed to visit someone or make a particular decision in your life. You put it off or decide to think about it later. Then a song comes on the radio that seems aimed at you and your situation. Next, a TV show or commercial seems oddly in line with what is at the forefront of your life and mind. Fairly soon you start seeing signs everywhere. A message from a friend, a page in a magazine. You open up the Bible and swear the words on that page were written for you and your particular situation. Even the trash on the sidewalk points you toward a message. This is the repeating and reverberating thunder. It keeps coming and resounding, orienting you back towards the original question or insight at hand. The thunder is important. Sometimes we may think we receive a flash of insight and decide to take a leap of faith. The insight could be about who to marry, where to move, or what job to quit. Jumping off a cliff with a leap of faith in any of these situations would be a fairly scary step. As a pastor, the author of The Dark Woods says he rarely trusts leaps of faith. Too often he has seen congregants who are sure that God has told them to simply trust and go out on a limb with their decision. Elms calls leaps of faith the junk food of the spiritual realm. He says, while it is true that the Holy Spirit does at times invite you to take a leap into the great unknown, the Spirit rarely does so without leading you to the edge of the cliff by way of 1,000 smaller steps. By the time you reach the edge, therefore, you have responded to so many sweet spot moments and experienced so much confirmation of your direction that the leap isn't so much a leap, but one more small step. An authentic leap of faith may become the first step of a new beginning, but taking that step feels more like the culmination of a long and engaging journey. Unexpectedly, and in the span of a single moment, a light bulb turned on over top my head last September 27th. I was here in Oklahoma visiting my mother for her birthday. My visit was coming to an end, and I was calling my sweetie to tell her all about my adventures and let her know that I would be heading to the airport soon to fly home. I left Oklahoma at the age of 22 and had no serious plans of returning. The idea of coming home wasn't on my mind and my heart or on my radar. Yet after listening to the joy in my voice as I recounted my day to Dana over the phone, she innocently said to me, "Why haven't we ever considered moving there?" Bam! Pow! Flash! In that split second, I felt something inside of me go click, and a rush of peace, joy, and excitement filled my body. It seems silly now. Why wouldn't I have considered it before? My friends, family, and roots are all here. But honestly, before that moment, it just wasn't something I had ever dwelled upon. That moment was a flash for me. But it certainly was not without repeating and resounding thunder, nor 1,000 smaller steps that led me to that moment. The thunder that came after that moment included me sending my profile to the churches and having it seriously considered. The thunder of Dana being 100% on board with this idea and possibility of moving to Oklahoma City. The thunder of the initial Skype interview where I felt a real connection to the representatives of both churches and the visions of each community. The thunder of arriving in November to preach for the search team and feeling confirmation that God had a place and a purpose for us here. The thunder of being connected to housing in the neighborhood we wanted without any effort on our part. Everything just kept falling into place. It was as if we were being swept up in some divine current that moved steadily and assuredly towards this place. Sure, it was a leap to pick up and move across the country. It was a leap to leave my beloved call and congregation in Minnesota. It was a leap to become a half-time pastor to 2 different congregations. But in hindsight, I had been guided to that leap by the Spirit via 1,000 smaller steps, which began decades ago. It's exciting and life-changing when those big flashes occur in our lives. However, this past Wednesday at our book study, we sat in a circle and several talked about another experience, a quieter storm. The flashes and thunder that reverberate on a smaller scale. The everyday insights that occur, which allow us to feel more connected to God and to Spirit. Talking with a stranger and having your heart strangely warmed by the interaction. A click into place that we belong in this world. The comfort that nature brings. The reassurance and resonance that we are part and on the right path. We may not be able to see too far in the future, but when the reverberations of the thunder roll over us, the moment we are inhabiting feels right and connects us with peace and with joy. Our contemporary reading speaks about an insect that looks like a particular orchid. The insect is drawn to the flower, and their interaction pollinates the world and creates ecological stability for the rest of us. The insect is simply following its senses, allowing itself to be drawn to the flower it was created to be in relationship with. The same is true for us. Elms tells the story of 2 brothers for whom fixing automobiles is a key part of their calling. They get the job done right the first time and charge a fair price for their labor. The brothers never recommend work that doesn't need to be done, and you are treated so well when you visit their shop that you almost want your car to be sick just to experience the vibe of that place. Once a friend asked one of the brothers what motivated them to do so well and be so honest. He responded, "My brother and I are Muslim. We treat treat every automobile as if Muhammad himself will be driving away in it. Creatures drawn to flowers, humans drawn to their callings. When I was in high school, I was exposed to a flash of insight regarding the world's religions. But it would take several years of thundering confirmations of that message before I was able to fully accept and internalize the original moments of clarity. I'd been part of a weekend church conference for youth, and the theme had been the world's religions. In just 3 days, we visited a Jewish and Hindu temple, a mosque, and several other places of worship. Before that weekend, I had assumed that my church and religion was superior and correct, and that everyone else was not as good as we were. I thought they must be mistaken, wrong, and not as beloved by God. As you can imagine, the flash was that God is much bigger than I had imagined, and that God speaks to many different people in many different ways. It would be several years later before I completed an intro college course on the history of world religions, and to actually have conversations with friends, professors, and neighbors of other faiths before I fully accepted the message, which had been thundering toward me in countless ways for a long time. My God, the God which Jesus taught me about, is a loving and compassionate God. It was not my job to think in my head that people unlike myself were going to hell. In fact, my job was to be the hands and feet of Christ. And that included forming relationships with as many people as possible, including those who have been marginalized, including people of differing faiths. This past Friday, I participated with many others in the second annual Muslim Day at the state capitol. It was a statewide event organized so our Muslim sisters and brothers would be encouraged to lend their civic voice to the community, even though they are often targeted by those in power with bigotry, hatred, and fear. From the parking lot, I could see the protesters' signs held high in the air, telling Muslims that their religion is a cult, that they are terrorists, and should repent and believe in Jesus. However, there were 2 long lines of over 100 interfaith friends: Christians, Jews, Unitarians, Buddhists, and many others who were wearing green buttons that read "Friend" to our Muslim neighbors. These friends lined the sidewalk on each side to provide a safe and welcoming space for the participants to enter the Capitol building. I stood outside smiling, greeting, and welcoming Muslims as they entered the Capitol. Then I entered and took part in the full schedule of events. Because I was wearing my clergy collar, I was highly visible as a supportive Christian ally. All throughout the day, Muslim friends would come up and thank me and other clergy for being there and for our support. We learned about the public education crisis in Oklahoma and how important it is to make your voice known to your legislators about your opinions and views. We learned about the importance of social media and organizing for cultural change. The hashtag I Stand With Ahmed campaign is a good example of the positive power of social media, and we learned about that story. Last September, a 14-year-old high school freshman from Dallas built a clock and showed it to his teacher because he wanted to be an engineer. However, his teacher and principal, influenced by Islamophobia, believed Ahmed to be a terrorist who had brought a bomb to school. Ahmed was handcuffed, taken to a juvenile jail, and suspended for 3 days. The ripples of fear against Muslims is palpable in our society. However, 2 days later, the hashtag I Stand With Ahmed trended on Twitter, and people heard his story and decided to let him know that they supported his dreams and ambitions. The young man received invitations to visit the headquarters of Google, Facebook, and the executive branch of the U.S. government. President Barack Obama tweeted, Cool clock, Ahmed. Want to bring it to the White House? We should inspire more kids like you to like science. It's what makes America great. Using social media to define who you are and your people are, without allowing those who fear you to control the message to an entire nation, is empowering and inspiring. At the end of the day, we participated in a 2 p.m. interfaith Juma prayer service, where Rabbi Vera Harris, UCC pastor in Tulsa, Pastor Chris Moore, and Imam John Ederer led prayers and reflections about the importance of the gathering that day. My favorite part was when an older Muslim man sang the traditional call to prayer into the microphone. It lasted a good 5 minutes. All of our Muslim friends were kneeling on prayer rugs with their shoes stacked neatly to the side throughout the rotunda. The rest of us were seated in chairs around the atrium. The sound of his rich voice echoing throughout the marble hallways of the Capitol filled a place inside my heart that made me smile. This is what a hate-free OKC looks like. Being there for each other to ensure each one's respect and dignity. I know there are some in Oklahoma who would rather lightning strike that building than allow what transpired in those chambers to occur. But my prayer is that the ripples of our peaceful gathering will continue to resound throughout this state until there's no need for 100+ interfaith persons to protect any segment of society. Because hopefully one day no one will protest a human being for the way they look or the peaceful religion that they practice.